Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I hope y'all are doing okay. Real quick, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Ashish. My wife Sonia is here. We get to pastor Commission Church in Plano. We planted the church 6 years ago through Church Multiplication Network in the North Texas District, and it's been such a beautiful journey. Someone told me when we were planting, they were like, "You want to plant in Plano?" Like, and if you know Plano, it's a very diverse city, and it's also a very liberal city. And they said that's where Pentecostal churches go to die. And I said, watch God, amen. And we started with 7 people in our living room, and we're around 250 people today, and God's doing a beautiful thing. And along with that, God's growing various facets of what we're trying to do as a church. And as we're growing, we're learning. We're nowhere where we need to be. And I'm not qualified. That's not why I'm standing here. It's just that there are things that we've learned along the way, especially over the last 6 years, that I feel like could be of use to you and probably the season of life that you're in. I'm probably in a very similar situation that you're in and your church is in, and I believe that we can learn together today. And I could share a few things with you that we've learned over the last 6 years. I was telling the first group of people this, that COVID actually came and hit us a year into our church plan. And we didn't know if we were going to stay open, if we were going to thrive, or we were going to tank. It was that kind of a situation. We didn't know if money was going to come in. We didn't know if people were watching online. We never streamed our services till then. We didn't have a concrete plan, but God surprised us and God showed up. And actually, it was in the middle of COVID that God kind of changed our entire perspective about generosity and what generosity meant. And as the team was asking me about, doing a breakout session on generosity, I think the North Texas District has seen so many churches over the years grow in generosity. And one of those churches has been us. We've seen God just add people, generous hearts, generous people. And again, like I said, this breakout's not coming from a place of, I'm not an expert by any means. I'm not ready to write a book, but this is my testimony. Is that okay? Can I just share my testimony of what's worked for us? And hopefully this is helpful to each one of you. Let's talk numbers real quick. You probably got some handouts as you walked in. There are studies that now call Christians the stingiest of the big 3 religions in America. All right, Christians make up at least 70% of the U.S. populace, and data actually shows that the average Christian donates a little more than $817 per year. Okay, these are Christians, these are churchgoers, which actually makes them the stingiest of the big 3 religions, believe it or not. All right, Jewish households donate $1,442 a year. A little more than $1,442 a year, an average household. And Muslims donate $1,309 a year. So you could see where Christians are stacked up in that. So there's this need for us as churches, leaders, pastors, to step up and say, hey, we got to open our eyes into not just knowing for ourselves, but also educating our church to understanding what generosity is all about. A quick show of hands. How many of y'all are church pastors? If you're pastoring a church, can I see your hands? Y'all are leaders in a church. Y'all are on staff at a church. Okay, that's great. I'm so glad that you are here, joining us in this journey. Pre-global pandemic, the average giving by adults who attended U.S. Protestant churches is about $17 a week. That's how much Christians gave, or people experience in churches. And 37% of regular church attendees among evangelicals don't give any money to church. Like, I was just giving you some numbers out there just to start off this conversation. So you could see how essential this conversation is to have within the church. The reason that we need to have this conversation is because it's not had enough. Sometimes churches do too much of it, and people are like just marred by it, they're scarred by it, and they're like, all the church wants is your money, and they probably went to some church that all the pastor did was talk about money, and you don't want to be that pastor. You don't want to be that church. And I get it because Sonia and I are the same way. Like, talking about money is probably one of the most awkward things for us, right? Like, if you went to seminary, you know there are a lot of things that they don't teach you at seminary. That pastoral ministry just throws a curveball at you. Anybody been there? I wish they taught me more about how to raise funds in anybody? Yeah, a little bit of that. You know, many believers don't even know what tithing is, and if they're new believers, they haven't even heard about tithing. They don't even know what 10% is. So today, I kind of want to talk about building a culture of generosity. And it's not comprehensive by any stretch of imagination. 45 minutes really can't cover everything. It takes 45 minutes for the finance committee to decide on the giving envelopes at a church. So let's be real. 45 minutes is not much, but we're going to do our best, okay? I'm going to give you a site map. We're going to do 3 parts if we have the time, all right? Part number 1 is we're going to discuss 4 strategies. 4 strategies for building a culture of generosity. Part number 2, we'll do creating a generosity pathway. I'll talk to you about what generosity pathways are. And if we have time, we'll discuss a generosity calendar. And if for some reason I don't finish on time, you can email me. My number is on there. We could definitely set up a meeting. Would love to brainstorm with you on some of this stuff. Let's talk about the 4 strategies for building a culture of generosity at your church. Point number 1, all right, this is the most obvious thing. And you're probably going to go, duh, I know that. Why would I come to a breakout session to learn that? It's instruct, okay? This is going to be the most obvious, but I'll tell you this. It is the most important. Because people don't understand the theology of generosity. All right, we've learned all the other theologies. We've learned all the other doctrines there is to learn. And trust me, this is not heresy. But I really want us to get to the core of this. Like, God is a giver. And it's no alien concept that God has made us just like Him. He created us in His own image. So if God is a giver and He made us just like Him, we are givers because we are made that way and we don't get at odds with who God created us to be. We should stop fighting that. So the culture of generosity isn't about funding a budget. It's about discipleship formation. And a lot of pastors don't get that. A lot of us will raise funds or we'll talk about money, but we talk about money as pertaining to a need, not really to address the posture of our hearts or our church's heart. Jesus talked about it. Jesus talked about money a lot. And if we're avoiding regular teaching on generosity, stewardship, and giving, we're not faithful to the Bible. We're not faithful to our task as pastors and leaders and Bible teachers to what Jesus is asking us to teach about. So that's why we struggle with awkward conversations about money. When money subjects come, we brush it off or we don't teach it in its entirety because we just don't have a concept of how to teach it without making it awkward. Can I just go on off the bat and just say this? Let's make money conversations normal in church. It's very, very important. For a lot of people, money feels like a private or an awkward topic, right? Especially in church. And you can break that barrier by actually creating a safe environment. So what I want to do today is I want to kind of venture out into kind of exploring what a safe environment for talking about money looks like in the church. Can we do that? Like, what is a safe environment to talk about money? Without guilting somebody into giving, without shaming somebody into giving, what does that look like? Right? Generosity, particularly in the church, should focus on the Bible. Not in the budget, not on the bills, not in the building. I think we as pastors are doing it wrong, and I did this wrong. The budget should not be the spending plan. It shouldn't be the spending plan. It's not the giving goal. That's not what the budget is, right? See, when I first started as a pastor, I was trying to teach people to give to the church budget or the church needs. The conversation was, hey, we got to keep the lights on. We got to pay our people. We got to pay for our programs and our and this and that and it was a lot of guilt tripping. If you don't give, it's not going to get done. If you don't step, if you're a family member, if you got to pull your weight, that was the conversation we used to have. But here's the thing: when I began to teach people to give because of the Bible, not because of the budget, Can I give you a number? Our giving went up by nearly 90%, and we exceeded our budget every single year after that. I'm not even joking, 90%. I'm not going to tell you that your church is going to experience the same thing our church experienced. Every context is different. But I can assure you this. If you can take a few things from here, and if you can run with it, I can promise you that you will start seeing some significant changes and some shifts. And maybe 1 year from now, you will come to me and say, man, I'm so glad that I sat in that breakout session. Cool? Can we go with this? All right. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Pastors, you got to teach about giving. Like, you ought to teach about giving. Like, some have said this, that if we copied the amount of times Jesus mentioned the topic of giving and generosity and proportioned our sermon schedule accordingly, over 20 messages in our 52 messages a year should be spent teaching about generosity. Because that's how much Jesus talked about generosity. That's over 40% of his messages. Think about that for a second. Like, how do we, I know we try to stay away from it, and that's me. I steer away from that conversation as much as possible. And if you're like me, I want to give you some additional resources, and I want to give you some additional tools today in order for us to build a culture of generosity within our church. The first thing I do is every year I do a discipleship series, and it begins in December. Right after Christmas. My first sermon after Christmas is a sermon series that I do on discipleship. And this last year, began in 2024, leading into 2025, was what I called the When You series. When You. And it revolves around Matthew chapter number 6, where Jesus gives us 3 when yous. He gives his disciples 3 when yous. When you pray, when you fast, and when you give. All right, these are 3 essential, and I break it down and I say, Jesus talks about discipleship, the disciples, and he's talking to his disciples, his followers. Every one of those situations, he's talking to the people that follow him. And say, if these teachings are too hard for you, there's the door, you can walk out. But if you were to follow me, this is the cross that you have to bear. And he says discipleship is about sacrifice. It's about giving up your time. It's about praying in the presence of God. When you pray, it's not if you pray, it's not if you fast, it's not if you give, it's when you give. So it's an understood thing that a part of Christian discipleship is praying, and as much as you pray, you ought to fast, and as much as you fast, you ought to. So giving is then not, hey, we got to do this because the bills have to be paid. No, you give because you're a disciple of Jesus Christ. When I started doing that, can I tell you, people just began understanding that generosity is who we are as people, who God created us to be, because that is who God is. And because God is that, we have to be the same way. I address it during Christmas. Christmas is a season of giving. If you're not using Christmas and generosity that people, Christmas people are generous. They really want to give. Are you giving them a reason to give? What is your tone? Are you doing a year-end giving opportunity? This is important stuff. We're going to talk about it a little more. But the first and foremost thing I want to talk about is talking about it. You cannot shy away from the subject. Point number two. How do you create a culture of generosity? You also have to be an influence. As a pastor, as a leader, and as a church, if you want to build a culture of generosity, you have to be a leader of influence. Generous leaders who teach generosity have to personally set a strong example. This is where all the amens go down, right? Can I tell you this? Your church will never outgive its leaders. I can't stress on this enough. If you want a generous church, you need to be a generous leader. Our staff and our elders practice percentage-based giving to begin with, starting with at least 10%. I mandate that. I will not hire somebody on my staff, be it a paid position or a volunteer position. I will not, simply will not, if they do not tithe. And I know a lot of y'all are like that. But it just doesn't go there. Even volunteer leaders. I had this conversation just the other day where one of our leaders came up to me and said, hey, you know what? To replace me, I feel like this person is amazing. I think she'll do excellent in this role. And I was like, okay, does she serve regularly? Yes. She's probably served the most in the last year? Is she always willing to step up? Yes. Is she sacrificial? Yes. She checks off all the boxes. Does she give? Oh, let me look. She hasn't tithed one time in the last few years. Do I berate people to tithe? I don't. Do I berate people to give? I don't. But if you want to be a leader, if you want to be in leadership, if you want to be an elder, if you want to be in a deacon, if you want to be on my prayer team, if you want to be in a place of influence, I got to know that you trust God with your money. Because I cannot trust somebody that doesn't trust God with their own money. Like, I can't. I simply can't. There's a void in your heart that I just can't put those pieces together. So you can serve all you want, but if you don't trust God with your money, I can't trust you. It has to start from the top. Like, I have this conversation throughout the year in different sermons that I do. When I talk about generosity, I use, my credentials and my ordination with the Assemblies of God. And I'm like, do you know, church, that I have to be accountable to the money that I receive? Do you know that they will not renew my credentials and I will not get a card that says I'm ordained, and I won't be able to bury you and marry you and do all of this stuff if I don't tithe? And I'm accountable to them. Like, people know that I tithe. No, not just that, but every opportunity I get. I'm generous with my staff. I'm generous with my children. I'm generous with, and I make sure that I model it. Not because I want to put on a show, but that's who I am. Like, I walk around saying, how can I be generous today? There are days that I have like dollar notes in my pocket, like singles in my pocket, and if I meet a kid in the lobby, I love connecting with kids and talking to kids, and if they tell me something good that they did, I always ask them, hey, what did you learn in kids ministry today? And if they're able to tell me what they learned, I look at Dad and say, hey, can I give him something? And he's like, yes. And Dad, Mom knows exactly what I'm doing. I take a single or a candy and I give. Why? Because I take the permission. I don't make it weird and awkward. Please don't make it awkward. And I say, hey, go buy whatever you want. It's not great. It's $1. But what am I doing? I am showing that generosity matters. I am showing a kid, and I am showing, and people see that. My staff know how generous we are. Like, we go all out. Like, we bless our volunteers. We are generous as a church. We have like a refrigerator that is filled with snacks filled with drinks, and a snack bar that any person that's serving on a Sunday morning can walk in that room and grab whatever snacks they want, and for their kids. Why? Because we want to be generous to those who are generous. Like, generosity breathes through every fabric of who we are as a church. You got to understand this. Yeah, your church will never outgive its leaders. We can't expect what we don't exhibit. Leaders build leaders. Remember that. Generosity is more caught than it is taught. A generous church is not only concerned with its own needs, but has a passionate vision to give and to serve its own community and its nations. Can I tell you this? Like, we had to make sure that we were an influence from day one. Like, COVID changed everything for us. I tell you this. I remember somebody telling me this. Like, they told me this. Actually, it was Pastor Brian Jarrett. We used to go to North Place before we planted the church. And Pastor Brian looked at me and told me this. He said, Ashish, if you ever shut down your doors, if Commission Church decides that it's not going to be a church anymore, will your community feel the impact of your loss? Like, will they feel that, oh man, the void, like, Commission Church is gone. They used to be an impact. They used to be a force to reckon with in this community. Like, from year one, we decided that we will tithe. Like, and you guys probably practice this already. And if you don't, can I suggest, if you want to create a culture of generosity, make sure that a minimum of 10% of everything that comes into your church goes to missions. That's not your last budget item on your list, on your budget. It should be your first budget item. You plan from that to everything else. Just like you would your own personal finances. Your church finances should be the same way. It's a minimum of 10% giving. So on that year 2, when we had nothing, when we thought we were going to tank, I looked at my leaders and my elders, and I looked at my finance director and said, hey, we're just going to start giving money. And he's like, what money? I said, whatever money we have, we're going to. So there was a church plant that was about to plant, and I looked at him and I said, we're sending him $500. And they're like, but we only have like $4,000 in our bank, Pastor. Like, how are we going to? I'm like, I don't care. We're just going to send it to him. Like, I made sure that our leaders saw the generosity instead of us. Like, we started giving money like crazy. One year we did 15% of everything that we got. Like, we go up by every single year. And I want to leave this with you. The number one reason we grew financially is because we showed people that we were just a conduit, a distribution center, a power strip that distributed what was coming in. Does that make sense? We likened our church to a power strip that we just connect, and we're like, hey, whatever comes in is going out. There are other people that are going to take what belongs to us, the power that's inside of us. It was kind of a storehouse. See, the problem with many of our churches is that we ask people to bring money into the storehouse. Like, bring your tithes to the storehouse. But we relegate the church to just a storehouse. But do you understand that the storehouse is also a distribution center? It's meant to be a storehouse, but it will rot. The stuff in the storehouse will rot. What does Jesus say about it? I don't want to go into it. He talks about moths, and he talks about the stuff rot. Like we got to understand that. Like, we're just not storehouses, but a storehouse is also supposed to be a distribution center. So what do? We just didn't keep it, we moved it. We became a channel. We were just not a container. And that's when the floodgates started opening. That's when opportunities, like when we stopped hoarding, we started multiplying. I want us to understand this. Like, we cannot treat God's money like our own money. It's the best advice I ever got from somebody when we were planning the church. When we changed our mindset, is do not treat God's money like your personal finances. I know you want to save for the rainy day, but God's finances are never meant to be saved for a rainy day. You just give because it's not yours to keep. Grow the kingdom of God. Find avenues to give. Where are we giving? I'll talk to you for just a second. But listen to this. Why do you trust Amazon? Because they take the stuff you order from the seller and they just don't keep it in their warehouse. What do? They deliver it. They send it out. That's important. We're going to talk more about this. But the third thing is this. Inspire. The way you create a generous culture in your church is you inspire. Can I tell you this? We have to talk about this. Nothing kills generosity faster than the black hole of church finances. What's the black hole of church finances? Anybody? What's the big question that the giver has? What are you doing with it? Where is my money going? And if you're a pastor, you probably had somebody that emailed you about this. Somebody that asked a question. Somebody that, lifted their hands during the business meeting and asked you where your money went. Now, if this is a regular conversation, if it is a transparent conversation that you have with your congregation throughout the year, 52 times a year, trust me, you will not have an awkward conversation on your annual business meeting. You won't. Or you wouldn't have to deal with that letter. I really want you to understand this. It's a legitimate question. But here's what we resolved to do as a church. We were going to regularly inspire our church. We were going to regularly share stories of life change, of needs met, and ministries expanded, all connected back to faithful giving. I want you to listen carefully. This is probably going to be the core of what I'm going to be talking about today, right? You have to be a leader that inspires. To build a culture of generosity, you have to inspire people to give. What does that mean? There's a young couple in our church that once came up to me and told me, man, we started giving because we felt like we should. That's what our parents taught us. That's what we learned in Sunday school. Tithing was something that we learned. So we give. They gave out a duty, but they then told me this. They said, we kept giving, or we keep giving, because we see what God's doing with it. You can create discipline within people to just give what they want to give. Or they'll tithe. They'll be status quo. But if you want to elevate them from status quo to extravagance, to understand the heart of God and generosity, you got to step them away from religious giving to saying, man, I give because I'm inspired to give. What does that mean, right? It means that you have to show the impact. There's a statement that we always say at church. Now, this is not original to me. Please don't get me wrong. I've heard so many people say this, and I want you to get the heart behind it. Every Sunday, we have a giving moment in our church. And whoever's doing the giving moment, this Sunday I was in Mexico in a missions trip. So I didn't do the giving moment, but the person that was doing the giving moment said this, and we say this every time. We say, you don't give. When you give, you don't give to Commission Church, you give through Commission Church. This is important. It's one of our it's kind of like a culture language for us. We talk about it so much. We instill this within the hearts of people, and we just don't say it. We mean it. Right? You just can't get up next Sunday and actually just say it because it sounds cool. you got to also live it out. What does that mean, right? You got to show the impact. What is our impact? What does this show for us? Our missions budget mirrors Acts 1:8. Okay? Do we all know what Acts 1:8 is? All of us know that. I expect you to know that. The name of our church is Commission Church. Great Commission is important for us. But we make sure the Great Commission is mirrored in every aspect of our church's, like whatever we do as a church, our programs. It could be discipleship, it could be missions, it could be anything. Worship. The Great Commission is our vision, right? So from a generosity standpoint, how does our missions budget mirror Acts 1:8? When we sat down and we talked about it, we decided to do it this way. We give locally. We don't give locally. We don't give globally. We give locally. What does that mean? We do it Acts 1:8. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then the rest of the world. I know that there is a window over there. I know that Asia needs my money. And I know the North Texas district will be probably mad at me, but the Buddhist Hindu priority is, I know that it is. And I know that people in Chinese churches need my money. But for me, that used to be my budget used to be, 50% of all our missions budget used to go international at one point in time. But post-COVID, we changed that completely. What does it look like right now? We have a 50-30-20. Okay, 50-30-20. If you're taking notes, you can take it down. 50-30-20. 50%, 20, 50%, 30%, 20%. 50% of our 10%. Okay, we do a minimum of 10% for missions giving. 50% of our 10% goes to our Jerusalem. That's something that we've written down. It's something that we follow to a T. What does that mean? Our Jerusalem are things that our people care about. The people that come to our church, that sit in our pews, that give regularly, the things that they care about, the mission field that they care about. What does that look like? Places that they can't go to Kenya. They can't go to India. But they can be of influence in our locality. They can be of influence in our Jerusalem. So we provide enough opportunities for serving locally. And we throw money. We give money at local missions as much as possible. Why? People want to see where their money is going. So we changed that. The moment we changed it from 30, 20, 50 to 50, 30, 20, our giving started going up. Why? Because people started touching what they were giving. They started experiencing, not just seeing the results, but actually being there to experience where their money was going. We got them connected. What does that look like? Local outreaches. We started supporting our local school PTAs. We started doing Thanksgiving grocery giveaways. We gave away turkeys and hams, and we asked people to join in the effort. We started feeding the homeless, and we started partnering with the city of Plano, the police department. And we said, hey, we'll give out Christmas presents to needy kids in our neighborhoods. And our families started buying gifts, and it was local. This is what we wanted to do. We got connected to Care Portal, where people CPS workers would say that this family needs something, and we would get connected to them and take the stuff that they need and deliver it to their homes and pray for them. And people got to see what we were doing. Does this make sense? Yeah. And then we said, okay, once we have 50% allocated there, 30% is then, let's focus on Judea and Samaria. Judea and Samaria for us was North Texas. It's the rest of the United States. It's U.S. missionaries like TJ Sawyer. And if you've never met TJ, go and talk to TJ after this. TJ is a U.S. missionary. He doesn't need to go to Asia, or he's called to the United States. So he is out there in the rural. He does rural compassion, which is a powerful ministry. So we join with people like that, whether that be North Texas ministries like Family First or Convoy of Hope or, the North Texas Dream Center or one of those things. We make sure that we invest into the local Judea, Samaria. All right? You're catching my thing? And then 20% is for the rest of the world. Not because we don't love. Trust me, I was born and raised in India. Please hear me when I say this. I'm not biased. It's not like, I only get to... No. I was born and raised in India. I moved here when I was 20, so you would think that all our missions giving would go to India. Where my people are, no. I am an American now. I am here. God has planted me in Plano, Texas. So my mission field, my money has to go to my mission field. Does that make sense? And it's not that I'm giving leftovers, but then we support U.S. AG missionaries, which we have a lot of them. We do orphanages in Uganda and India, and we do plenty of them, but there's still money left in the pot. Does this make sense? But when people start seeing this, where our commitment is, they're like, all right, man, let's buy into this vision. Right? What does that look like, right? So when we're talking about inspiring, it talks about, man, we start making stories. We start telling stories that are important. And we'll get to that in just a second. But what we do is we start doing testimonies. How do we inspire? Let me pause here and let me give you some tips. How do we inspire people? How many missionaries in this room? Any missionaries? Only TJ? Okay. The missionaries that we support, the organizations that we support, they're around 30, do you know how many? Around 35, I think 35 to 40 ministries, missionaries that we support regularly in significant amounts. I'm just not talking about like one-time giving. I'm talking about recurring giving that we support every month. Throughout the year, we are very intentional about making content that inspires our church people. People that give, we want to make sure that there's a connection, a direct connection between, what is your name, sir? Randy. I want Randy to know that if he gives $100, that he gets to visibly see where his $100 went to. So when I'm meeting Jessie, who is one of our missionaries to Curacao, when I see her the next time, or even if I don't get to see her, I look at her and say, hey, Jessie, can you do a quick video with me? And I'm standing with Jessie and I say, hey, Jessie, tell me a little bit about what you're doing in Curacao. What's happening over the last 4 months? And I'm recording a quick video with her. And I'm like, I ask her a question. Give me one story of life change. Tell our church about something you did, somebody you shared the gospel with. And she's sharing a story with me that I make it a video. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be crazy. And if you can't do that, if you've never met Jessie personally, you can literally send them an email and say, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you take your phone, put it up on a stand in portrait, in landscape mode, and would you record yourself telling our church of what you're doing in Curacao? Oh, what you're doing. We have missionaries in Taiwan. Can you tell us what you're doing in Taiwan right now? It's a quick 2-minute video. And the video always ends with Commission Church. Every video ends with this. And I tell them particularly, it doesn't matter if we send them $50 or $100 a month. It doesn't matter if it's $25 that you send a month, whatever your context is. It always ends with Commission Church. I just want to say thank you for your generosity. It's making a difference. Somebody got to know Jesus. There's a school student that accepted Jesus yesterday because of your generosity. So Randy in his heart is like, man, I want to give more because this is making an eternal impact. Does this make sense, y'all? We're not making stuff up that's not happening. We're just making a connection. You know about what Jesse's doing, but guess what? Randy doesn't. As a pastor, you know they're sending you newsletters. They're sending you emails. But guess what? Randy has no idea. So if I can make this known to Randy, so I played on Sunday morning. This last Sunday I wasn't at church. I was in Mexico. We built a church for a church in Mexico. There's this pastor right on the border of Nuevo Laredo, right across the border from Laredo. A tornado came right through his city, and he had this makeshift church building. Went through, tore his entire building down. God told us to go and build a church for him. For the last 2 years, we've been building a church for him. And this last Sunday, we stood in a building. For the first time, they were in a building with a roof over their heads. They literally were worshiping outside of this building that they were constructing, and they would pull in a school bus to stop the sunlight from hitting them, and they would all hide behind the school bus. And if you know Nuevo Laredo, it gets up to like 120 degrees. That's how hot it gets. And they were behind the school bus, so they don't. Does that make sense? And for the first time this Sunday, they said, Pastor, would you come and dedicate this building to the Lord? And I was standing inside the building, dedicating this building. People were in tears. And I was there making a video for them. And video for our church saying, Commission Church, do you know what you just did? 4 of us got to experience this, but each one of you. So I recorded this on a Saturday. They played it on a Sunday when we were still in Mexico. And guess what? People were clapping. They were celebrating. Why? Because they got to be a part of it. You got to make sure that you inspire people to be generous. Don't expect, you feel, like some of us feel like, oh man, if I preach a sermon, a switch will just flip and people will turn from not generous to generous. No. You got to inspire. Teaching is great, but you also got to do the other things. What other things do? We celebrate generosity corporately. For example, okay, some of y'all probably don't have 15 missionaries that you support. All right, but you probably, how many of you have a benevolence fund in your church? You have a benevolence, everybody has a benevolence fund, right? It doesn't matter how big or how small. But check this out. Laura sends you an email or calls you and says, hey, Pastor, I need help for an electric bill to be paid. Could you please help me out? You're not sending an email to the entire church saying, hey, church, can we help? We don't want to make it awkward for Laura. We don't put Laura in an awkward situation, but what do? We tap into our fund and we give Laura what she needs according to your policy or whatever that looks like, right? And we give to Laura. But guess what? We're not going to bring Laura in front of everybody next Sunday and say, Laura, can you tell everybody thank you for... No, we don't want to make it awkward for her. But guess what? You could ask Laura, hey, Laura, it would help me a lot as a pastor. And I think people would appreciate if you wrote a small note, all right? Just write a small note. Just saying thank you. We were in this situation. You don't need to mention your name. You don't need to mention any details that people would think who you are. Just a generic note saying, hey, I was in this situation and Commission Church came through for me. You can get up on a Sunday morning and say, church, can I read you a note this morning that I got from one of our members? None of y'all know that she was going through this or he was going through this or this family was going through this. They needed diapers this week. And guess what? You came through for them. Do you know what that does for that person sitting in that pew saying, my money that I tithe is good, being put to good use? Like, that is impactful, right? We do that on a regular basis every Sunday. Like I said, every Sunday we have a giving moment. Right? We don't pass around the plate anymore to everybody. Again, it's just what we do because everybody's context is different. Please don't think that, hey, because we don't do it, you should not do it. If you do it, great for you. But we don't pass around a plate anymore because 99.8% of our giving happens online. All right. We still have a box, and we still announce that if you want to give in person, there are people that still give checks, and we're grateful for that. But we don't pass around. We don't spend. We don't need a song. We don't need 5 minutes passing. We just don't do that anymore. We could use that time elsewhere. But guess what? The culture of generosity is just seeped in so well. All we do on a Sunday morning is get up and say, hey, watch this video. Or do you know that this is what's happening? Or show a picture of our missionaries in Taiwan sharing the gospel with a group of people, a group of students, and saying, watch this. These many kids heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. Look at this video from Convoy of Hope. They went into, and guess what? We support them month after month. So it's not a need-by basis. So when a hurricane hits, all we got to do is download a picture and show, hey, this is what your money is doing. Like, you're inspiring people and saying, we already were on the ground because of your generosity. And all we say is thank you for your generosity. If you want to give today, scan this QR code. It's not we're going to take a moment, I'm going to pray over you, and I'm going to pray that God changes your heart. We're going to pray the demon of stinginess, none of that stuff. Like, not that I'm saying that you do that, but we make it so awkward sometimes. You don't have to make it awkward. Just be honest with where the money's going, y'all. You're already doing it. All right? Celebrate generosity stories. We do it once every year. We make a big deal out of it on our business meeting. We call our business meeting. We changed it from business meeting to Vision Sunday. That's what we call it. And on that Sunday, we celebrate what God did in our church over the last year, where we gave, and we do what, I know a lot of people don't like it, but we come up with an impact report. An impact report is for stakeholders, and we put some cool graphics and numbers. Hey, these many baptisms, and it could be 2, but you mentioned those 2. That's worth celebrating. Come on, am I talking to somebody? You talk about how much came in. You don't have to hide it. What is the money? And I know you don't hide it, but make it plain. Put some cool graphics on it. You email me if you need some help with that, and I'll make them for you. I'll make my team make them for you. You have no idea. When people see those graphics and those numbers, and like, oh, this is how much we gave to missions, and these are our missionaries, and man, people get excited about stuff like that because they have a visual in front of them. Right? We celebrate that. On Vision Sunday, we tell people where their money went. We tell people how much of increase. And ever since COVID, every single year, we have seen a dramatic shift. And for the first time, man, we're celebrating. I'm celebrating with you guys. For the first time next year, we are praying that we will cross $1 million. Like for the very first time in our budget. And that's what God has done in the last 6 years. Not because, man, I preach about giving or I tell people to give every week. We just celebrate generosity. And we just walk in generosity. Like I told you, we're not like a multi-million-dollar budget church for me to stand here and be an expert. I'm just telling you what worked for us. Take what you can. Last one. Involve. All right. You know what the scripture tells us to do? It says, collect people's financial gifts and offerings. That's the word used in the original translation. Collect it. What does that mean? You got to make it simple, y'all. We live in a day and age where things are it's made so simple. There are so many avenues. And yet some of our websites are not updated. Like people want to give. The other day I wanted to give to a ministry and a church that helped us out. And I went to their website and it was asking me for my first name, my last name, my date of birth, my social. No, I'm just kidding. But all, like you can imagine, I was going through a list of things I need to fill out. And I'm like, this is just way too much. Like I want to give, but the people that want to give in your church, they don't have the time. Some of you are advanced and you have like text to give, but it's like text, generous to 972-379-1800-572, and by the time they type the number out, you're already on the next announcement. And guess what? The slide is gone. And they're sitting there saying, what do I? Oh, sorry, you lost out on $100 because you just didn't have it figured out. Make it simple. Make it super simple. Just say, hey, give on the website. There's a QR code. Make it simple. There's a QR code. Catch up with the times. We do something called a tap disc at church. We got it really cheap. You can contact me. I can give you information about it. Super cheap. All people do is they pick their phones up, tap the disc, and you can just give like that. Like it's a quick 2-3 steps. We have a free app. If you want to know what the free app we use, you can contact me. We use a free church app where we put everything out there, and our giving went up. Let me tell you this. Our giving went up by 70% the moment we introduced our church app. Because it became so easy. They went to our church app, and all they do is press give. They put the dollar amount and say give, and it goes. They just have to set it up once, and the rest of it follows. I kind of want to close this out. I have a few more minutes left. But, sometimes we make it so easy, so hard. But I think it's important to simplify things. All right? I'll tell you something that I do. For the first time when someone gives, we celebrate their first step. I celebrate somebody's first step. Just like I would text somebody that's visiting our church for the very first time, I actually celebrate when somebody gives for the first time. I want you to hear me. For the first time, that's a spiritual milestone. Remember this. I know there's mixed opinions about this, and people say, oh, pastors should not know who's giving. Or for me, I want to know who's giving. And the moment somebody gives for the first time, it might be a new member, they get a text from me, or they get an email from me, or a postcard from me saying, hey, this is Pastor Ashish, and I just want to let you know that I'm so grateful that you stepped into generosity. That was your first step. And I want you to know this. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You have no idea the number of people that have messaged me back and said, this is the first time ever that a pastor has reached out to me personally and said thank you. Like, some people don't want to be thanked, and that's okay. This is just our system, and it's worked for us. And there's some people that you need to move, and I kind of want to get into this. This is the last part, and I'll go through this real quick. But there are some big-time givers. Okay, I'll talk about that in just a second, but let's talk about, these were the 4 steps. I'll talk about creating a generosity pathway real quick. So you got to come to that point where, okay, I preached a sermon series. I've encouraged my people to give, but you got to develop what I call a generosity pathway. You got to identify the different kinds of givers in your church. Make it simple. For us, it's this. We have 4 tiers of givers. 4 tiers of givers. Tier number 1 is an emerging giver. An emerging giver. Who is an emerging giver? Somebody that's never given before. Somebody that just doesn't know what tithing is. It's a new believer. They have no concept of giving at all. The second one is a tithing giver. Somebody that's giving. They're actively giving, maybe 10%, maybe lesser than that, but they regularly give. All right? It doesn't matter if it's a small amount or a big amount. The third one is an expanding giver. An expanding giver is who gives their tithes. They're particular about that. Doesn't matter in what attitude they give, but they're like, I'm going to give my tithe to the Lord. I believe in that. And they also give their offerings. They're like, I'm going to go above and beyond. If there's a need, I will give to the need as well. So they don't stick to their 10. They can go 12. They can go 15. They can go above. And then there's the extravagant giver. People that we call kingdom partners. I can do a mini series with you guys on extravagant giving and how we develop what's called kingdom builders in our church. That's a complete different topic altogether. But hear me out. Extravagant givers are people in our church that really want to give. You have no idea. There are people that really want to give. They have the gift of giving. Anybody you know, there's at least one person in your church that have a gift of giving. Anybody? Y'all do. And some of the extravagant givers are pastors. Y'all are sitting right here in this room. And you have the ability to develop more extravagant givers. Now hear me really quickly. Each one of these levels, you have to disciple. I don't have time to get into each one of these. Like, how do you disciple? Maybe a conversation for a later day. Maybe you can come up. But you have to come up with your own pipeline. What is your framework? You have to identify the different groups of people in your church. People that give, people that have never given, people that give and a little more, and people that are extravagant. And the question that you have to ask each one of these groups, it's a conversation that has to continue, is what is your next move? What are you going to do next? The one that has never given before, what's your next move? I've preached about it. I've taught about it. This is what the Bible says. What are you going to do about it? That's your challenge. The one that gives status quo, what is your next move? The one that gives a little more than status, what is your next move? All right, I'll tell you this and I'll close, okay? It's Jim Baker. I don't know how many of y'all know Jim Baker, but Jim Baker, popular pastor, life coach. He actually tells a story about one of his deacons. He comes to find a very close friend of his is a deacon in his church. He's reading the newspaper one day and he comes to find out that this deacon, he's donated a multi-million-dollar gift to a local university, a gift. Not a loan, a gift to a local university, right? And he's like, this is my deacon. This is my guy. And he's like, that's crazy. So he meets up with him for lunch on another day. And he's like, hey, man, I saw this newspaper article. You gave this much of money to this university? He's like, yeah, man, I did. And he's like, I was close friends with him. So Jim asked him, he's like, how come you've never given a sizable donation like that to the church? And you know what this man says? Listen carefully. He says, Jim, our church can't handle the kind of money I can afford to give it. Now, this is your deacon you're talking about. Jim is shook. Your deacon is sitting across you and saying, our church cannot handle the kind of money that I can afford to give it. I don't think he was being proud in that moment. What was he trying to say? He's like, the college president shared a compelling vision with me and a strategy for an entrepreneurial initiative that he was passionate about. He drew the plan. He gave me the idea. He said how he was going to accomplish it, and that's all I needed to hear. I gave him the money. You know what he said? He said, if I ever gave that money to the church and its board would spend months arguing about how to allocate that fund. What he was saying is, you don't have a plan. You don't have a vision. And you don't have a mission to go along with that. The problem with many of our churches is we have vision, but no plan. Some of us have a plan, but no vision. A mission without a vision is void, and a vision without a mission is void. Pastors, get on. Like, there are big people that really want to spend. They want to give the money. They want to fund that project, and they want to be asked, but they want to know where it's going and what you're going to do with it. Sometimes you got to dream big. You got to pray about it, fast about it, and you got to go into the presence of God and say, God, I need this. The church needs this, whether that be an AC unit, whether that be a new building, whether that be, and you got to be like, this is the person God is asking me, but go into the presence of God and ask him for vision, ask him for drive, ask him for that sense of purpose, and then go and have a meeting and say, hey, this is the plan. This is what God told me, and I believe I need to ask you for it. You would be surprised the number of people that look at you and say, I believe in you. Let's go. Let's do this. Church, the culture of generosity is one that is just, people catch on to it. You can teach it. That's step number one. But it has to be observed. You've got to be able to do a good job of celebrating the culture of generosity. Like, what are you doing today? Like, say thank you. Say, when you observe generosity around you, man, talk about it. Help people take their next steps, because that's the most important thing. I'm going to end over here. I know there was a giving calendar. The giving calendar is pretty easy. You got to take some steps in order to come up with a plan. Your 52 Sundays. What are you going to talk about? Man, you can literally, church, you can go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to give you 52 different giving moments for your church. Say, hey, I want 52 different verses from the Bible or 52 different strategies to help me present to the church a giving moment. All right? It could be a verse. And ChatGPT will be able to generate those verses for you. It's just the Bible, and it's giving you those verses, and you can take those verses, stand before the church, and do a giving moment. And just to tag that giving moment, you can talk about one of your mission fields. You can talk about a giving thing that you did. You can talk about Convoy of Hope. You can talk about TJ Sark. You can talk about one of your missionaries. Do it today. Don't delay. You would see engagement. You would see buy-in. You would see people like buying into the vision. You would see people like getting connected and starting giving much more than you've ever seen before. I'm just sharing what worked for us. I hope it works for you. I'm just going to open it up for a few more questions if you guys have. I know we're 6 minutes over time, but if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer them for you. If not, you have my information, my email's there, my number's there. I'm always accessible. Feel free to contact me. Any questions? All right, y'all. God bless. I'll be here for a few moments after this. Thank you so much for coming.